Okay, so we're going to get started with the next session. If everyone can take a seat, please. So I hope everyone enjoyed the break, had a good cup of coffee and a little fruit plate, and is ready for an exciting session. We're going to talk about advances in surgical therapy and what we can expect in the future with surgery. So we have a great panel of speakers for this session. For those who don't know me, I'm Dr. Julie Allais. I'm one of the surgical oncologists at Sunnybrook at the Susan Leslie Multidisciplinary Neuroendocrine Tumors. So I will be chairing this session. Our first speaker is Ms. Sonya Carrie, who's a neuroendocrine tumor patient who recently underwent a liver transplant. She is living in St. Catharines, Ontario, and is a proud neuroendocrine tumor survivor, and she will talk to us about her experience with liver transplantation.
Okay, well, I'm sure, as all of you notice, I'm sitting down. I had a liver transplant 3 months ago, so I'm not quite ready to stand and deliver just yet. I'm sure you've heard the claim that most people are more afraid of public speaking than dying, and that's true. At least in my case. Yeah, I'd like to throw out there that I'm not somebody with a lot of public speaking experience, but I will do my best. This was really sudden. At first I thought, oh, there's no way I can do this. I don't have it in me. But I realized that if I don't do this, you guys might not get to hear about liver transplantation as a treatment for NETs, which I think is very important. And you probably won't hear it from a patient perspective very commonly either. I'd say it's pretty important considering it saved me when nothing else could. I truly have a burning desire to give back to this community that has supported me so strongly, so I owe it to all of you to tell my story. Well, about me, I'm 22 years old. At 18, I started to experience symptoms of what I would later know as Carcinoid Syndrome when I got out of bed, when I ate, when I'd get a little nervous, a little excited. A lot of time was wasted with my GP. He did an ultrasound, actually, when it all first started, and he saw things on my liver, but he chalked it down to them just being cysts, and that was it. And he refused to associate them with tumors or with cancer. Like, I understand doctors not wanting to scare people with the C word, but I mean, I truly wish somebody had scared me. So I took that as permission to forget all about how ill I was. I thought that doctors were always right, that they never made any mistakes. I'd never been sick before, and I certainly didn't know how to advocate for myself. At 18, hopefully you're planning for your future, and NETs isn't a part of it. When I was finally instructed to do the 24-hour urine test, this was after I'd done some online research, and I kind of came to the conclusion that this sounds like this must be what I'm dealing with. I was already in school at that point. I was a month shy of 20. I was really struggling in my first month of college. And the results came back at over 800, and the lab, I think under 40 was normal. So this was very bad. And basically, it kickstarted my entire NET journey. CT, MRI, O-scan, imaging, it all revealed a tiny primary in the small bowel and innumerable metastases throughout the liver. Unfortunately, these tumors were very active in what they were secreting. It got to the point where I couldn't leave my house because of constant episodes of flushing, wheezing, cramping, shortness of breath, and the worst part for me was a very high heart rate. If I tried to get my groceries, I would just end up lying on my back in the aisle, so what was the point? I was permanently debilitated, and this went on for 2 years. My primary was removed in London, thanks Dr. Gray. This was in April 2015. Dr. Gray was actually the first person to mention the possibility of a liver transplant down the road, which I thought sounded so huge and scary. I had other patients discourage me and tell me that this wasn't the route to go, saying, oh no, you don't want a liver transplant, you don't need to have that, and so I was very confused. I didn't really know which way to turn. Step 2, I went for some bland embolizations. It was supposedly one big bland embolization, but we did it in 4 parts because I was told that it wasn't safe to do it all in one session just because of how big the tumor burden was. The outcome was really good. It resulted in a lot of shrinkage, and I had just shy of a year of progression-free survival before they started to grow again. Unfortunately, this procedure did nothing for my symptoms. I also tried both types of the long-acting SSAs, so the octreotide LAR and the lanreotide. Neither of them even touched on my symptoms. Needless to say, this was really frustrating to both myself and to my doctors, as those injections are the standard of treatment for symptom relief in surgically inoperable people. And I mean, it seemed to work wonders for nearly everybody else, so why not me, right? I never discovered the full details. It didn't seem possible to pinpoint exactly what was coming out of my tumors aside from serotonin. All I know is that it's common for carcinoid tumors to secrete amines, and I couldn't tolerate amines, like severe allergic reactions. A lot of foods are moderate to high in amines, like essentially everything. So I ate rice and vegetables every day for 2 years. I assume you all enjoy food. Food is really good. Imagine sitting at the dinner table with a bowl of rice like every night while your roommates eat pizza and drink beer. My mental health went in the toilet. I felt isolated among NET patients in a way because everyone was telling me to accept my new normal, but there was nothing acceptable about it, and I flat out refused to believe that it would never get better and just continue to get worse. But enough about my hardships, the story does get better. Dr. McGilvery is who really put my hopes in liver transplant. He is who I was referred to upon request after I read a really promising article about him in the Toronto Star. I initially consulted with him in hopes of getting a resection, and he was really honest with me. I couldn't have a resection because there was tumor in like every single lobe of the liver. We wouldn't be able to leave enough healthy, clean liver behind that would be functioning. So he did say that although he couldn't do that, I was a good likely candidate for liver transplant, and I took this and ran with it. The only surgical option that was available to me, but it was available, and it could remove every single one of those liver tumors that was destroying my life. I immediately began undergoing lots of tests to determine my candidacy. There's a lot of criteria to meet, such as the Chi-67 must be low grade, there must not be any visible spread outside of the liver. Don't quote me on this, but I think it's 1 year. In October of 2016, I had met all the criteria, and I was listed. I was granted exception points on my MELD score. MELD stands for Model of End-Stage Liver Disease. The range is from like 6 would be like less ill, 40 gravely ill. So somebody who was say 40 would be getting a call for a new organ in probably like a week at the most. I had perfect liver function in spite of all these tumors in my liver. So I was given a really low grade, and if I hadn't gotten the exception points, it would have stayed very low, and the likeliness of me ever getting a liver would just have been very slim. But just 3 months later in January, I actually got a call. The call could not have come quick enough. Like at this point, I was 80 pounds. I was eating not even 1 meal a day. My symptoms were so bad, none of my normal rescue medications were even working anymore. It was getting harder and harder to breathe, like every day. The call was not from being chosen from the list for a deceased donor. I think my MELD was only 22 at the time. This call was because a living donor wanted to donate a part of his liver to me, and he was a perfect match. His name's Pete. I think a lot of you have seen him in the groups. I posted some photos shortly after my surgery. Pete had never met me personally prior to my surgery. Jackie was talking about the Let's Talk About NETs campaign yesterday, and I think my church was listed on the partners thing. That was because for NET Cancer Day, I actually brought in a cake, and I brought in a bunch of pamphlets, and I took the opportunity to educate the people at the church about NET cancer, and the pastor there, he brought awareness as well to the fact that I was looking for a liver donor. And he just gave some information on my disease, and I think he put out some packages for people who wanted some more information. Little did I know that there was someone listening, and that they went home that day and they started the ball rolling on becoming a donor for my sake. The fact that someone who does not even know me would love me enough to donate 70% of their liver to me is the most moving thing that I will ever experience. I've always said nothing, not even childbirth, not marriage, will ever compare to the moment that we saw each other for the first time after after my surgery, and we very slowly but enthusiastically just like limped towards each other for a hug. My surgery lasted about 9 hours. I woke up a few hours later. I saw a nurse holding a boombox, and she was blasting this song by Sia. I think it's called Alive or something. I asked her to turn it up, and she was really confused, but probably not as confused as me. Hallucinations are not fun. But at least when I was out cold, the words going through my head were, "I'm still breathing, I'm alive." I guess that's good, right? I spent a day in the ICU before being moved into the step-down unit, and a couple of days later, the floor from which I'd be discharged, like things in there, they move pretty slowly from what I mean pretty quickly now compared to how they used to be. People would be in there for weeks and sometimes months, but now they get you out relatively fast. Something major to note is that the day after my transplant, when I was more aware of my surroundings, like I immediately began to eat again upon waking up. I grabbed the yogurt from my breakfast tray and I devoured it like it was the best thing in the world. Eating food again made me so emotional. Somebody brought me a samosa and I just sobbed while I was eating it. Can you tell I really like food? A physio came for me to go for a walk. I got up and out of the bed with greater ease than pre-surgery, believe it or not. It would take me forever to get out of bed before because of my heart rate and shortness of breath. I walked around on the floor. My heart rate stayed normal. I didn't fall over, not once, and I'm just thinking, pinch me, this can't be real. I've said to some that the high dose of the prednisone that you get on at the beginning while you're in the hospital turns you into a monster. I cried a lot over nothing. I screamed over people not getting me things fast enough. Sometimes I hallucinated and screamed at the same time, but at least I had an excuse for my bad behavior. The med class is a must for every patient before they go home. It's led by a pharmacist who will educate the new transplant recipients on the anti-rejection medications. Before you go home, they make sure that you're capable of taking the meds on your own. There's a lot of follow-up appointments, blood work, sometimes extra testing, depending on how you're doing. Anyways, the Living Liver Donor Program at the UHN is fantastic. We are very lucky to have it. I know I was. Their success rate is actually 100% survival for all living liver donors. They've performed over 700 successful transplants through that program since 1999. And from my understanding of what it says on their website there, all donors have returned to a regular lifestyle with no restrictions. So pretty impressive. The multi-organ transplant program is Canada's largest. They perform more than 500 transplants there yearly. The point I'm trying to get across is that most patients won't even be told about the possibilities of transplant, even though it might be of a huge benefit to them. It's very uncommon for NET, like I said, lots of strict criteria. I was told that I was actually the first at Toronto General to receive a transplant for NET. I know of a couple of ladies who had the same thing, but at London Health Sciences Centre. One's here today and the other couldn't make it, from what I'm told. And from my understanding, they're doing exceptionally well, so that's very encouraging. My goal going forward with my life is to share my experience with others, to show the ropes to the newly diagnosed, and to be an advocate for both NETs and organ transplant. These subjects will always be dear to my heart, as will all of you wonderful people that I have met on this journey. I want to thank you all for the support and the encouragement that you've shown me and the things that you've taught me. I think I finally understand what people actually meant when they say a new normal. Like, sure, I'm tired, but I've got a lot of strengths, and I plan on using those strengths to contribute to this community for as long as I'm able. Thank you.